May you, the rock of our life, be our strong foundation and form us into the body of your Son, that we may gladly minister to all the world through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Start with the first reading, or should we wait?
Oh, go for it. I'm just gonna plug this in.
Okay, the first reading is from Isaiah chapter 51. Listen to me, you that pursue righteousness. Just thought I'd give it a little bit. You that seek the Lord, look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who bore you. For he was but one when I called him, but I blessed him and made him many. For the Lord will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places and will make her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Listen to me, my people, and give heed to me, my nation. For a teaching will go out from me, and my justice for a light to the peoples. I will bring near my deliverance swiftly. My salvation has gone out, and my arms will rule the peoples. The coastlands wait for me, and for my arm they hope. Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look at the earth beneath. For the heavens will vanish like smoke, and the earth will wear out like a garment, and those who live on it will die like gnats. But my salvation will be forever, and my deliverance will never be ended. Is the promise of the Lord. Let you- And the continuance of chapter 51 it starts out Israel's sin and the servant's obedience. This is what the Lord says. And he just keeps saying and saying and saying. Promise was given to Israel and to us through them. Good morning, Glenn.
Good
Good morning.
I like that line, my justice a light to the peoples. And then as he keeps going, for like my arm, they hope.
It's way too quiet here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, the whole of
just got here after I did my first sermon.
the first sermon.
Oh, I started reading with a little exuberance.
Oh.
Is that what makes a sermon?
Yes. Listen to me, my children.
Crowd here. It's too much hot air.
You came to the right place if you're looking for hot air. Sorry. I love the ending of the last verse. But my salvation will be forever and my deliverance will never be ended. Because as much as I don't want to, I keep messing up and needing deliverance from stupid things I do and say.
And the
Yeah, I wonder
About
if,
chapter 51, you know, it talks about comfort. But it's really about God's justice too. It's about the God's justice is found in restoring the people. You know, not punishing them, but restoring them to their, you know, to their life. Right, when it's to their righteousness.
So it is a verse of restoration and deliverance, but it's also seems to be a warning that lift your eyes up to heaven, because I'm going to get rid of what you know today is the earth and life and the way people live. It seems like you're going to be destroyed if you don't, and those who live on it will die like gnats.
you know, when you were saying deliverance from all the things that you do, like. I tend to think of deliverance as a salvation from a condition of sin, instead of a litany of sins.
Okay,
Does that make sense? So like we were born into original sin, we're born into a condition of sin, we're given the, you know, we can't escape that. So we need deliverance from that. So sometimes I think we're really hard on ourselves, like Luther was. He tried to create a litany of sins and remember everything he did that was wrong. And finally his mentor said, no, why don't you actually go out and do something bad and come back to me. But it's the condition. And I think of Israel here, just writ large. I mean, it's the condition that they're in. It's not. It's their general faith, lack of faith, I think, and I don't know, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's. You know, and that we get caught up in our own understanding of deliverance. Or righteousness, or, you know, justice. And instead of trusting in God's justice, in God's deliverance. As you were talking, what struck me too is it's an old book. It talks about how Israel, and really all people get caught up in the land, and how important the land was. And I was just reading an article this morning about how, and what speaks to it is how many people now are starting to look at moving to someplace more hospitable than, you know, where they're living, because
Such as,
well, people in you know, in the South, where
in the
you know,
United States, the
they-
South.
20-year, yeah, in the article said in 20 years, this summer will look to be a mild summer. What we've experienced this summer will be mild compared to what we have to look for. And the people who really are believing are saying, you know, we need to find someplace better. And that, you know, I mean, there's even a professor at Tulane who teaches at Tulane, who is telling his students that Tulane University will not be there in 20 years, 25 years,
Why?
because
It'll be underwater.
they're underwater, because I forget how many feet underwater New Orleans is. Tulane University's in New Orleans. And If you've ever been to New Orleans, I mean, the strangest thing I remember walking downtown New Orleans and you would see a ship. Way up, a barge. Way above, above our heads. And that's how far underwater, under sea level, New Orleans is. And, if they get hit by another Katrina. What that's gonna look like, and so it's. And what that's gonna look. Who are we trusting? With our deliverance, and I think, here. God says, people have lived, I mean, this is spoken to the people who are on their way from Babylon back to Israel. And, they have lived 75 years in captivity. And so they're living that deliverance. The sense of deliverance now.
There's an interesting piece of Bible trivia in this text. It's the only time outside the Pentateuch that Sarah is mentioned. And the use of Eden is a rare usage. I mean, you think about this group of people that are coming back into that land. I mean, you imagine what they had experienced as a community, and then trying to go back into the promised land. It's the second Exodus. And what they had hoped for and what they were waiting for is maybe returning to. That's not what they returned to.
Not at all.
And unfortunately, sometimes I think we set our expectations high, only to disappoint ourselves. And I was reading somewhere that the best vacations are the ones that are unplanned. Because if you plan a vacation, then you have these expectations of what's about to happen. And then you only set yourself up for disappointment instead of excitement and surprise. But the unplanned ones, like road trip, those are the ones that carry the most fond memories. I think that's true. They had planned this vacation back to the Holy Land and had the really high expectations. And then set themselves up for the expectation of the Messiah, I think.
But the people that were returning had never been there because that generation had died out.
Yeah.
And these people had just heard about this wonderful place that their ancestors lived. It's kind of like wandering around through the desert for 4 years. A generation died out.
They didn't know how to farm.
Yeah.
Well, that's when a lot of the scripture was written by the priests and the different traditions, the different schools that tried to capture things in writing, because the oral tradition was dying.
Well, and I think that the second half of this is about the heavens will vanish like smoke and the earth will wear out like a garment. He's trying to warn them, like, don't get too attached to the land, right? But yeah, it's not gonna be like you want it to be, but that doesn't mean that I'm not with you.
We move on to the psalm.
Sure.
Well, I'll read it. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, with my whole heart. Before the gods, I will sing your praise. I will bow down toward your holy temple and praise your name because of your steadfast love and thankfulness. For you and faithfulness. For you have glorified your name and your word above all things. When I called, you answered me. You increased my strength within me. All the rulers of the earth will praise you, O Lord. When they will praise you, O Lord, when they have heard the words of your mouth. They will sing of the ways of the Lord, that great is the glory of the Lord. The Lord is high, yet cares for the lowly, perceiving the haughty from afar. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you keep me safe. You stretch forth your hand against the fury of my enemies. Your right hand shall save me. You will make good your purpose for me. O Lord, your steadfast love endures forever. Do not abandon the works of your hands. You know, it's easier to read it out of the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
It is, that's why, yeah. That's why we print it out this way, because it's more efficient,
Yeah, I
but
understand.
it's
Yeah,
not. It's not more satisfying.
yeah.
Echoes of Psalm 23 in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the last two verses.
Yeah. What do you make of verse 1? Before the gods, I sing your praise. That's a strange thing that sticks out for me.
Hmm.
The Bible says probably means before the heavenly assembly that surrounds the Lord of hosts. But the expression could refer to the gods of the nations, whose power is understood to be nothing in comparison to that. I like that explanation better because it makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I have a similar note. But describing these assembly of beings such as angels, but clarifying that only the Lord is God.
Yeah.
That in the last couple weeks sometime. God showing his power over Baal and supposedly earthly gods and had no power. I hope someday all the rulers of the earth will praise God.
They're too busy praising themselves.
Yeah, I think. You know, you talk about what's the expression, power corrupts, and I think so many times. When you get into that position of almost ultimate power. You start thinking you're a lot more important than what you are. And I did it, you know. It was all me that got me here.
Well, this is said to be a Psalm of David, and so even though it's at the end of the Psalms, it's really an early psalm. That
That's what I was wondering if it was written, because it just seems to jive with Psalm 23 a little bit.
yeah, and I don't know how I don't remember, I don't know if I really know how the Psaltery was organized and put together, but this seems to be a more ancient psalm. And when they talk about it being a Psalm of David.
I think so too.
Is David giving thanks for, for God not abandoning him in the midst of his, some of the way he has turn to his own ways instead of God's ways.
Well, that brings up another question is David. David's Psalms, I mean, he did a lot of really bad things. So in what sequence of his life did these Psalms get written? Were they earlier? Were they after his brutality and some of his other obvious bad things?
A lot of the Psalms say a song of ascents. What does that mean? ASCENTS.
Well, because they always, Jerusalem was on a mountain, on a hill, so to go to the temple was to, this was you always. That's why they always talk about going up to Jerusalem, whether you're going, when we talk about going up, I talk about going up north and.
Yeah, up to
and down
Minnesota.
south.
Or going
Yeah,
up, yeah.
on the basis of direction. But in Israel, no matter where you were, if you were going to Jerusalem, you went up to Jerusalem and up to the temple.
That's interesting. I mean, I've always thought of it as, let our prayers rise up. As a,
Yeah.
as a smoke offering, as a,
Mhm.
let our prayers rise up, ascent, but. Maybe it's both, I don't know.
But I mean, that's what I was taught and
Yeah,
I've read that, that was. So. In scripture, that you hear that often, that we're going up to Jerusalem, and that was the idea.
It's familiar to me too. Like the song you sang on your way up the mountain.
And I think. In that last verse. That. When I read that, I also think of, Jesus. Where he uses from Psalm 22, but it was that same. Thought of God abandoning and that here David is seeing himself as a work of God. As something God has created, has made, and just do not abandon me. Do not abandon the works of your hand. And how often can that be our prayer, that we want God to be with us, not abandon us.
that's my prayer most of the time.
So this-
And we get this all the time in the Psalms, but that. This God is the God above all other gods or all other beings or whatever, but he still cares enough for the lowly. He still cares enough about me individually and just how powerful that is. That to have such a powerful being still care about me.
But, that is part of the power of God, Yahweh, is that sense of, yes, he has brought together the nation of Israel. But his strength, his faithfulness, just to the nation, but to the individuals. And that, and when you think about it, that his power is, that means his power is beyond that of just being the God of the nations. God of Yes, it's the God of the community. He is both and
Mhm. Mhm.
the God of the people of Israel, also the individuals. Comes to the individual.
See, my Bible says, for the 8th verse, the Lord will work out his plans for my life. For your loving kindness, Lord, continues forever. Don't abandon me, for you made me.
Mhm. Yeah, there God's.
I could read that, Romans 12, 1-8. I appeal to you therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and not all the members have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness.
So. How much? I can't remember how much later was Romans written than First Corinthians, where he first starts talking, where he talks about.
I don't know how much longer, but well, I mean, I have it written down somewhere, but off the top of my head, it's the last.
It's Romans, so it's the last.
Yeah, it's his best. It's really a culmination of all its theological ideas and there's a definitely pure, authentic Pauline. And he talks about body, and again, he talks about body with many members and the differences are to be celebrated amongst the members. For the benefit of the good of the one body. If you use a football analogy. A team has different players. Try to exploit the weaknesses of the other team. And lift up the benefits of your team, but what Paul is saying is. It's not about weaknesses and strengths, it's about differences. You have one body, many members. Not all the members have the same function, and that's okay. It's okay. And you think about the body of Christ, you think about the church. I mean, we were all the same. If we all had the same gifts, it'd be a really boring place. And we'd have one big strength and a bunch of deficiencies. But since we're all diverse, we all celebrate that and are stronger together because of it.
Part of the individuality and the free will that God gave us. And just think what this world would be like if all the men look the same, all the women look the same, all the trees were the same. If flowers were all red or, all white. You look at how magnificent is God's creation. And we're very lucky if he has allowed us to see all those differences and enjoy the beauty. You go to the Badlands of South Dakota, And it's like what I envision that moon looks like. But there's a beauty in that, you know, it's.
It's rugged, but majestic.
Yeah.
It's got a majestic quality to it, I think. The way it catches the colors. It's just very dramatic.
These. Sometimes I forget that. Some of those other people out there that I. Don't appreciate very much are God's children too. Like you were saying earlier, don't abandon the works of your hands, well. You know, just because he didn't make everybody else perfect like me, doesn't mean that. You know, they're still not his creation also.
Verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. What do you guys make of that?
Again, my Bible says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but be a new and different person with a fresh newness in all you do and think. Then you will learn from your own experience how his ways will really satisfy you.
I think Paul was a cerebral type. He really valued. That's why I think I like Paul. Faith to him is there's a part of faith that's really involves discernment. God gave us brains to discern, to be discerning of this world, to be discerning of God's Holy Spirit, and to know the difference between the two, and what is of God and what is of this world. And I think, you know, for many, that comes from the heart. For many, their faith is a feeling, sense core. For many, it's an intellectual thing. For others, it's, you know, working with your hands, serving. I mean, there's different models of spirituality. But for Paul, I think it's more, I do think it's a cerebral kind of thing.
Yeah, I sort of in juxtaposition of what you were saying, Rod, of like, you know, I think I'm perfect. This is also true for me, but also I'm also always looking for validation, right? So verse 2 is telling me that don't be conformed, like the world is not going to give me the validation I'm looking for. It's God, and that I shouldn't be focused on the validation. I should be focusing on transforming and renewing my mind. Yeah.
When I was working, that's what I strive for all the time. I like to make money, but what I wanted more is people to say, "Oh, Rod, you did a great job. Oh, Rod, you're number one," or whatever. And it took me a long time to realize that those praises only lasted a second. And when I finally realized that God was the one helping me do all this, and that what I ultimately really wanted was to earn his praise, or to, I know that I didn't have to earn his praise. It was,
I know what you're saying.
and
It's
then I could find happiness without having to have, "Oh, Rod, you're a great guy."
when you're able to transcend the need for adulation, that's when you start to really perform. And that's a maturity issue. And I think that's a cycle that everybody goes through. But we're raised like that. I mean, we're raised to receive the carrot and the stick, right? But when we're able to transcend that and live for ourselves and be self-differentiated, as they call it, then you're really able to be productive and perform without the worry of what other people think. And, I think for Paul, that's a big thing here because he's obviously not looking for the world's affirmation. He's really trying to tell us that it's God's gift, and not only that, but it's to celebrate the gifts that others have too, and not compare ourselves to them. But we start comparing ourselves to others, we get into the weeds a little bit.
Well, I think. And we're prone to. Think of ourselves as an individual instead of a member.
It's a community.
A member of the body. Where we think of ourselves. Standing alone. Instead of standing together with the body and with the other members. That. They're the ones who. Yeah, who hold us up. In the midst of that in the midst of our brokenness, in the midst of our woundedness, those things, it is the body that holds us up.
Like a Band-Aid with my reading glasses on. Measure of faith. Each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. What do you make of that?
I think, for me, it's, the. Faithfulness of. In the. Trust that we have in God, is different for different people, and I was. And I think about my own. My own upbringing. Yes, there was a lot of that, you gotta measure up. Because I was raised by a drill instructor father, so there's a lot of measuring up. But it's also, I was also taught a lot about by him and my mother, that you can't do it alone.
Me, this verse is hard because. In one sense, I think that God has given us. All the same. Gift of his love. But. We have different people come into our lives. To help lead us to him. And it's hard to me to understand that verse by the measure of faith that God has given you or assigned.
Yeah,
you.
it almost feels like predestination, like we all get our certain amount and
Yeah.
that's all we get.
And how come you got more than I did?
Right. Yeah.
She's channeling Don Liebernecht.
Yep.
But that's what it does sound like.
Yeah.
Well. And how many of us? But how many of us really take time to really go deep within ourselves? To see what is the measure of faith that God's given us?
Well, it's not the same all the time either.
No,
I think
that's the struggle I had, you know, and I have to say, it's become easier for me, you know, to go within and see what is the measure of faith that God has given me.
different
It's
circumstantial.
different and different. You know, but I can look back and see, you know, throughout my ministry that it's that. Even though I didn't understand it at the time, it was there. I
What-
didn't understand it.
But here's the thing. And his next, he says that, but then the next, he starts to talk about community. So it's like, I think we tend to think of faith as an individual thing.
Right.
And it's real easy for us to do that in Western society. But what part of our faith is a communal thing? And involves others. I mean, I can think of times in my life when my faith was strengthened because I was around other people, whether it was a friend or if it was an assembly and gathering for worship, or maybe in some cases a stranger I encountered. It was had a serendipitous talk about God. I mean, I think we all benefit from each other's thing.
You know, without a doubt.
And to me, that's the power of the church, and that's, I think, what he's trying to get into here. Is, you know, when we are with one another, then our faith is definitely strengthened.
I even have a note in my Bible that the verse 2, where it's talking about you may discern, that it's specifically a plural you all may discern. Like that's not necessarily an individual action, that's a communal action,
Good
is
point.
discerning.
It's a really good point. Y'all, it should said y'all.
Y'all.
So that
Yeah.
y'all will make a discern. It's a good word.
Yeah, think about H. George Anderson when he was. I heard him speak once, he was former bishop of the ELCA.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you heard him, but when he came to Sioux City when I was up there, and he talked about how when his first wife died of cancer, he said, you know, his grief was so overwhelming, so powerful for him that he told a good friend, one of his colleagues at the seminary where he was teaching at the time, you know, that I can no longer pray. I'm just not, it's just not within me to pray. And his colleague said to him, don't worry, George, we're praying for you. We'll pray for you. You know, your prayer. And so, you know, that discernment that says, even when I can't, you know, and it's, well, and he says, like he says in chapter 8, where he says that, you know, when we don't know how to pray, the Spirit will pray for us.
that's what Luther called vicarious faith. We can
Yeah, and
vicar, just vicar, the root of that word just simply means bridge between. And so, you know, if Marge prays for me, then she's acting as the vicar for my faith to God. And I think that's what that is. I mean, that's what that is.
yeah, no, it is, you know, so we can. It's a matter of trusting the community as well as trusting God, and that God is at work. You know, you know, God is at work in Rod's faith and Marge's faith and Carol, you know, and Bev's. And, you know, and it comes together in the community
Well, I
to serve us.
I'll tell you, as a pastor, you know, y'all probably think, well, it's the pastor that's responsible for helping us grow in our faith, but the irony is that the strength of a pastor's call, I think, comes from the openness that pastor has to being empowered by the people that he or she serves in their faith. My faith has been vastly strengthened because of the community I serve, or the communities I serve. And that yeah, I could go on and on with stories and stories upon stories about how that is, but that is so true. That is so true. You know, every time you're around somebody who lost a loved one or whatever it is in their life and how they're responding through faith, that's a privileged space that the pastor gets to be strengthened in. And I think that message needs to be said more often, because the pastor or whoever is serving, whether, you know, maybe it's a church leader, but we're all benefiting from one another's faith, is what my point is. And life experience.
So many times we look to you as you're the head of our church, you're the leader, and you know, it's your job to help us get there. And, you know, but we forget that we should be praying for you every day, for your strength and being part of, as you said, part of your, you know, so that we're all part of the community of Morning Star, community of faith in Jesus Christ. You know,
That's why,
we've all got a little part or a big part to play.
well, that's why we're so intentional about saying pastors are set aside instead of set above. We're set aside to walk with, but not to lead with reins, but to walk with. And it's our job. I think a big part of our job as pastors is discernment. It is about helping that community discern. I mean, that's what I think what we need to be about, but anyway.
You have the same reaction I have at times to pastors who refer to the congregation they are serving as their church. This is.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say that, right? I mean, it's
Right.
easy to say in an identification kind of way, but in a possessive kind of way, I don't agree with that at all, because it's our church.
Yeah, but I refer to Morning Star as
That's my
church.
church. My church, in the sense is, this is where I worship. This is my grocery store. This is, you know, my,
Yeah.
you know, but this is my Costco. Yeah, and I'm just, but yeah, when they say, when they're saying it as a, well, this is as a possessive kind of thing, and it's like, oh, I don't have time I don't want to spend time with those kinds of guys.
You want Matthew?
I'll read Matthew. Matthew 16. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do you say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah.
This is the second call of Peter. The first call was when he came out of the boat. And the pattern here is, adulation and then failure. So, I mean, the story goes, you gotta read ahead here. Jesus, he's got this faith, right? And so Jesus is ready to tell him, well, I'm gonna die on the cross. And Peter says, no, it can't happen. And that is the opposite of the confession that he just gave. This is probably the single most impressive confession of who Christ is in the Gospel of Matthew. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. It's set up as a mountain top experience followed by a valley. And then the play on words with Peter's name, Petros, literally means rock. Talking about petroleum, it's from the ground. Petros is a strong, solid foundation for which the church can be built upon. Peter's faith, they're ready to go, but it's also a rock which sinks into the depths of the sea, the abyss. The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Sometimes I feel like the gates of Hades are trying to prevail against the church. And it's frustrating.
Imagine how more difficult our life would be if the devil had anywhere near the power of Christ.
Oh, that's what I do when he says, get behind me, Satan. Now, yeah, get behind Jesus, let Jesus lead the way. Also, this is the first instance in Matthew's gospel where the word ecclesia is used. Church, ecclesial. So it's used in conjunction with a confession of who Christ is. You think about worship when we gather as the church. What is the one thing we always do when we gather as the church? We confess who Christ is to us. That's part of our worship. It happens in prayer, it happens in the creed, it happens in the word, it happens in preaching, it happens in a receiving of the sacrament. You think about all the ways in which we confess Christ, both in word and in deed. That's what worship is about.
And I think I get the other thing when I think of this confession and then of Jesus saying what he says to Peter, that, when he says church, says, wherever two or three are gathered in my name, I'm in the midst of them. I mean, that's church. It doesn't have to be
Church.
yeah. It doesn't have to be worship in our sanctuary and all the, surrounded by the gospel and the beauty of that place. It can be, it can be down on, under a bridge where you are encountering someone who's, or
Yeah,
that's why I love
living
doing worship at Table Grace, is because the people who come there and, doing worship in that setting, that can be church. And that if, what. And it really, what you say, what you lose here on earth when you. You know. That. You. Give people that opportunity to, to experience the. The forgiveness of God, forgive the body of Christ. There's no question. About whether they, when communion is offered, there's no question about whether or not they are worthy of receiving it. Yes, you were telling the story of one of our members who went to a Missouri Synod church and was told no, that because they weren't Missouri Synod,
They're basically without saying you're a heathen, we told them you're heathens.
Yeah.
And
That's the same thing I can't understand. You go to a Catholic church for some reason. You're not supposed to take communion. It just, why isn't everybody accepted? Just like we do,
because they have a different understanding of justification than we do. There's still a lot of room, and I gotta be careful what I say because this is online. Isn't it online? But there's still faiths that are legalistic and law-based in terms of how you receive God's grace. And like when I said vicar, the bridge, the priest wants to be the bridge between, must be the gatekeeper of God's grace instead of the conduit of God's grace. And after having been a Lutheran all my life and been through seminary and lived it, practiced the means of grace, I don't understand how anyone could think otherwise. I mean, I'm so deep into Lutheranism. I don't understand how you could believe in God's grace any other way. I just don't get it.
been a Lutheran all my life too, and I still don't understand it the way you do.
No, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think grace is not, I mean, it comes down to it. It's not something that can be fully comprehended.
I just know God's grace is wonderful and it's there for me and it's there for everybody. I had a friend who went to a Wisconsin synod and he invited me to Lutheran church, much smaller than Missouri Synod. And he said, invited me to his church. He said, now if you come, you can't take communion.
Not a full invitation, is it?
No, and I never went, but
Yeah, good for you.
I mean, I have gone to Catholic churches and I don't care what they say, I still go take communion.
I do
Because that's
too.
between me and God. And, I guess what they don't know won't hurt them, I guess.
Right.
But it's God's gift. It's not the gift of whatever church you're there. You're all there worshiping God. It's a communion experience, a communal experience. And, I'm so glad that, this Lutheran church decided to go to communion every week. Where, 30 years ago it was once a month. And because it's another gift from God that reinforces all that he did for us.
Okay, I have a question which will show my ignorance. Whatever you loose, doesn't say loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. I don't know what that means.
That's a good question. I think that's. Can't be answered necessarily in 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, I have it underlined in my Bible here. I have it underlined here in the explanation. And then here I have it underlined because I don't know what it means. Okay.
I think it has to be,
Mhm.
I dealt with families, so is Glenn, so with you and your experiences that. They didn't quite. Forgive one another in this world,
Mhm,
they die,
mhm.
what happens and. Is that forgiveness automatically extended in the kingdom of God? I mean, I don't. I think it can be, I think forgiveness can happen even post life on this earth. To me, it's the power of grace. Is of God's kingdom. Is just as powerful on this earth as it is in God's kingdom. But it is a weird way of saying that.
The image that comes to my mind thinking about keys of the kingdom, and then some things are left bound and some things are loosed. I think of like a zoo. I'm like, did we let the lions out or did we keep them bound? I don't know. That's the image that pops into my brain thinking about
Oh, yeah.
what gets bound and what gets loosed. Which doors are you unlocking and which ones are you keeping locked?
I
Okay.
think, yeah.
But yeah, I don't like to think of humans having that much power.
If you, well, there's a very good explanation online. Binding, loosing,
Okay.
what it means, and if you can just key in loose meaning in heaven, it talks about what Jesus meant by that. And I don't know who did it, it's biblical answers, but I don't know who gave the answer, but it's talks about Matthew 16:19 and anyway.
Yeah, I almost think it would be better if he said whatever is loosed in heaven is loosed on earth.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like it's just all about unlocking the kingdom of God in our world and all the gifts of that kingdom here now.
Yeah.
But why it's said like this, I don't.
And he's not just talking to Peter, he's talking to everybody around Peter and,
Yeah,
letting them know that they also have the power to teach people. And
maybe his confession was what was being loosed on earth as. This is who Jesus is for us now. Maybe that revelation was loose in the midst of those sightings.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to do some work on that when I look at the sermon. So thank you. That is confusing though, isn't it? People are wondering what that means.
Well, I've always wondered what it meant. I've got underlined here and here and. So.
Well, it's time to turn you all loose.
yeah,
I know what that means.
To unleash the grace.
Okay.
my Father,
Who art in
In
heaven,
heaven,
hallowed
be thy name,
thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
thank you all. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You all.
You working today? Yeah. A big job. Okay. And Agnita's sorry not to be here today, by the way.
She's really had one.
She's had one thing after the other, really.
Yes.
Who's that? You?
Agnita, yeah. She has had a lot going on. She just had 2 teeth pulled yesterday. and She said her face is all swollen and sore and black and blue and, yeah. Yeah, I think she's got to have 2 implants, I
Oh.
think. I think
Oh,
that's the
shit.
next thing. But then she had her fall just before she went to went from Sweden and it was kind of funny. She had to get her Swedish passport renewed. And her face was all black and blue from her fall.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't, they wouldn't let her, wouldn't take her picture. So her sister went out and got some cosmetics and she covered up all the black and blue on her face and went back in, had her picture taken and all's fine.
There's a sermon illustration.
Yeah.
So does she have dual citizenship?
Evidently, yeah.
Wow.
And she wanted to, get that renewed while she was there. It was kind of funny. But anyhow.
I keep trying to get a hold of Jessica, who's Luann's caregiver, and
Oh,
to arrange a time to go see Luann.
she had several caregivers.
She had more than, but Jessica's the one I do know. I got her number, but is Jessica still over there?
I think so. They're just, she has like 4 or 5
Okay.
and it's 24 hours, so you could get a hold of anybody.
If I just show up over there, would that be a problem?
Well, she has physical therapy sometimes,
Okay.
so it might be better. to
But she'd
call.
probably be home.
Yeah, and she
But-
naps a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
I would probably call first.
Eat what?
I would
Oh,
call.
call.
I tried calling her, but her phone doesn't give me the option of leaving a message.
Hmm.
Do you get a hold of her?
Yeah, you call her cell phone or her home phone.
Whatever's in the directory.
Okay. Should be her home phone. Yeah, if she doesn't answer, the care